talking about Jonathan Taylor, and now the Colts are giving him permission to seek a trade, see what the market looks like. There was actually news that broke today saying that they put a cutoff date, which is Tuesday. I'm not aware of any specific dates in the NFL calendar, or at least the significance that Tuesday has. But as it may be, Jonathan Taylor, that's his cutoff date. And I was thinking about, so I guess I'm slowly garnering a reputation for being somebody who's like anti-running back. I'm not anti-running back. As a matter of fact, I've been pretty crystal clear. The guys like Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, in this case, Jonathan Taylor, I absolutely defend wanting to get their money. Dalvin Cook even, defend these guys 100%. What I have said is that the data very, very, very clearly states you do not need an elite running back, or heck, even that elite of a run game, to not even just compete for and win a Super Bowl, just make the playoffs. Again, the Chicago Bears led the NFL in rushing this past year. And they got the number 1 overall pick of the draft, which they, of course, traded to Carolina, who took Bryce Young. I'm not anti-running back. I am pro-data. I am pro-analytics to a certain degree when they clearly state that they help or don't help you in the long run if you want to win football games at the highest level. But notice my 2 arguments, because I'm not moving off that position until proven otherwise, but notice what I was talking about. Super Bowl, playoffs. Colts aren't going to either of those this year. Their definition of a successful season, the Indianapolis Colts, would be very similar to the Houston Texans. I would say even more so because their quarterback prospect is far more raw. It's by week 18, is Anthony Richardson undeniably better than he is going into his first start week 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars? If he is, and we've heard the term project be thrown around for AR, talking about a guy who has all the upside in the world, the question is whether or not he can meet it. I think Shane Steichen, who's done wonders for Justin Herbert, even more so for Jalen Hurts, because he's a very similar prospect to Anthony Richardson. If you look at his tape and his what people are talking about him coming out of Oklahoma, I think it will work from that perspective and that standpoint. But what you want if you're Indianapolis is to say, hey, could we find ourselves in a position where he gets better over the course of the year, maybe win 5 or 6 games. Maybe we surprise people. Maybe there's an upset here. Maybe we upset Jacksonville and wreck their chances of getting like the 1 seed or something. And you go into the 2024 season, or rather 2024 offseason, say, we are a significantly better football team today than we were at this time last year, and build off of that. Jonathan Taylor would do wonders in terms of helping their young quarterback and helping his development. We know that Anthony Richardson, what has been my biggest question mark, my biggest concern for him, many's biggest concern, 52% completion percentage at Florida. One of the most inaccurate quarterbacks in college football last season. But he went number 4. Why? Because he's a freak athlete. Because we've seen quarterbacks of his size, his stature, his athleticism go on to have very successful careers, certainly to this point in the NFL. Josh Allen being the prime example. Jalen Hurts, I think, to a lesser degree, has had a very successful career to this point thus far. If you're the Indianapolis Colts, you got to ask yourself this question. And look, is the relationship between them and Jonathan Taylor too far gone to be mended? Who knows? That's another conversation. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, no trade happened. Miami or somebody doesn't trade for Jonathan Taylor, and he's a Colt come next Tuesday. I think you sign him to a short-term deal. Whether it's a 2-year deal, 3-year deal, this is one of the rare instances in which I think you're actually better off giving the running back his money, because you're not competing for a Super Bowl. You're not competing for a playoff spot. Your primary objective is for Anthony Richardson to be a significantly better player in Week 18 at the end of the season, going to the offseason, than he is right now. If that's the case, you've done your job. It's a successful season, whether you win 1 game. Of course, I don't know if he'll have been that much of an improvement if you win 1 game, but whether you win 4 games or 7 games, that'll be a successful season for the Indianapolis Colts. And if you give that rookie quarterback a dual threat guy, right, the running game to lean on to make the game a little bit easier for him, I think it'll do wonders for him. We've seen quarterbacks of the past. Dak Prescott had Ezekiel Elliott. Dak Prescott is a much better player today than he was his rookie year, despite what folks may tell you, like, oh, Dak was his best year was his rookie year because he only threw 4 picks. Yeah, but the Cowboys didn't really trust him near as much then as they do now. Dak had Zeke. Dak had that offensive line to sort of help him develop, help him ease in. I know we laugh at Russell Wilson and talk about is he washed or not, But there was a time in which Russell Wilson was considered a fringe top 5 quarterback in the NFL back in Seattle. When he had beast mode, when he had that offensive line, it eased him in. It helped his development. We've seen this with quarterbacks in the past, time and time again. It's only the just otherworldly talents that we've seen, like a Mahomes, like a Burrow, that really don't need a run game at all. Trevor Lawrence really doesn't need a run game. Etienne helps, doesn't really need it. Anthony Richardson kind of does, because he's so much more raw of a prospect, so much more raw of a talent. So if I'm the Indianapolis Colts, listen, I think they've handled this Jonathan Taylor situation about as poorly as one could. I think when you have an owner who has historically treated his players poorly in terms of how he talks about them publicly in the media, in terms of how he negotiates with them. Chris Ballard is the general manager, but we know Jim Irsay is sort of the face of that Colts franchise. It's kind of been a disaster over the past, well, really since Peyton Manning left. Certainly since Andrew Luck abruptly retired. But if I'm Indianapolis, I would keep Jonathan Taylor. I think it works for them in the long run. I don't know. I was just thinking about it, and I'm like, for Indianapolis, are they really, again, how much longer, how many more years before we look at the Colts and we're like, okay, because you got to realize, Jacksonville's just getting better. Trevor is only going to get better. Houston, I kind of like Houston. Among teams that I'm almost certain won't make the playoffs, Houston's got one of the better, for whatever this means, Houston's got one of the better rosters in that regard. Had some good additions in the offseason. I thought they had a solid draft. Obviously got the second overall pick in total. So listen, I don't think that this is a season that the Colts are going to look back and say, hey, I shocked the world, got to the playoffs, won a playoff game. For that reason, I bring Jonathan Taylor back. I really would. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.